Hey, there we are.
Hey, are we on now?
Yeah, well, welcome to the show.
Technical issues. Hey, welcome to Behind Enemy Lines, Terry and Paul again. So we have a super special, cool guest that I'm excited about tonight. We have Pedro Orta. He was a 19-year CIA agent whistleblower, and he's going to tell his story. He didn't make the 20 years, which really pisses me off because that's what you get your pensions and all that good stuff, right? So he's going to tell a very interesting story. And then he also has a documentary called Deep State Gangsters, Deep State Gangsters, and he's going to talk about that documentary that I think he was the producer and director of with some other whistleblowers. So it's going to be very, very interesting show. So
he's also got a book named The Broken Whistle, a Deep State Run Amok. So a whistleblower expose. And I think we'll be talking to him a little bit about what's in that book. And maybe, Terry, you'll find out how you ended up on a no-fly list.
Yeah, domestic terrorist.
I think it's just because you're a goddamn troublemaker. But
Italian. They were racist against Italians. Yeah. All right, so we're going to do the IFA commercial, and then we got Pedro. He's ready to go.
We will not bend. We will not break. We will not yield. We will never give in, we will never give up, and we will never back down. We will never, ever surrender. Because we are Americans, and our hearts bleed red, white, and blue.
Hello, everyone. We're back. So that was a quick little commercial. So we have Jose in the wings, ready to come up. I'm sorry, Pedro. Pedro. Sorry, Pedro. Sorry, I had to work with a Jose today. So we have Pedro in the wings. Why don't you let Pedro? Hey, sorry, I'm Italian. I kind of get confused names. How are you? How are you, Pedro? Thank you for coming.
I'm doing wonderful. How are you today?
Very good. Very good. So.
As good as we can be living in a state like Illinois, where everything's going to hell in a handbasket.
So we talked a little bit. Here's like the agenda, and it's going to be loosely coupled, right? So we're going to deviate and stuff. So before we talk about your background and how, I know it's going to take a time to explain your background and lay the foundation for where you got to where you're at, right? So that's going to be interesting in itself. Before we do that, and this is something that I'm personally interested in, right? So what made you become a CIA agent, like, how and why, you wanted to become a CIA agent. And then, like, for people that are listening that might be interested in becoming a CIA agent, what do they typically look for to recruit a CIA? I wouldn't even know what the resume, like for a college student, or, they'd be great to hear about it. And then just jump right into your story, and then we'll close out about your documentary.
Well, the first thing is keep in mind that the Central Intelligence Agency has the operational branch, the analytic, the technical operations officer, and then also the administrative functions. So, I mean, it depends as far as what kind of career track you want to follow. In my case, I had political science, international relations, academic training, and significant interest. And I was graduating summa cum laude, 3.9 GPA, straight A's across the board. And given the fact that I was Hispanic, Spanish language fluent, there was an interest in the analytical department to bring me on board as an analyst, working for the Latin America division where I can leverage my language skills. So that's one thing they look for is language, academic ability. Those are significant for the Directorate of Intelligence. They call it now Director of Analysis. And same thing applies with the operational department as far as being an operations officer, a case officer. Although in that particular case, they look for people that have, you got to have a unique personality to go into the operational branch. You don't necessarily need to be an outgoing and extrovert, but you've got to have the ability to work in a variety of different situations with people. And it does help if you have perhaps either foreign language not just foreign language, but having lived abroad overseas or exposure to overseas environments would help. As far as technical aptitude, technical degrees are extremely important. The hard sciences, the technical, the engineering help, and the administrative functions are just basically line administration, logistics, human resources, accounting. Academic training is critical, though. They typically won't look for people without a college degree. And that, in a nutshell, is the best way I can describe it.
Do you guys go, because I'm intrigued by it. I think this is cool that you're on the show, so I'm honored to have you on the show. The stuff that we see on TV and stuff, do you guys go through, regardless of what function you do they put you through special training and weapons and stuff like that? Or it just depends on your function if you're out in the field or and do they really do that type of stuff if you're out in the field? Like in special makeup and all that stuff, they teach all that stuff?
It depends on what career track you're following. If you're going to be doing operational work overseas, you're going to have to get some training to go abroad. The most vast training is the one to be a case officer, an operations officer, and I actually did undergo that training. But it's more than just the operational tradecraft as far as handling human assets, agents, conducting clandestine operations. There's different facets of it. The agent communications, you've got surveillance, detection, training. But then if you're going to live overseas, depending on the environment you're going to live at, you may have additional training to train you for that specific environment. There's always mandated courses on security, personal security. In the high threat regions, then you've got firearms training. And, if you were to be one of the paramilitary officers, that's a whole different ballgame. For that matter, you really cannot become a paramilitary officer within the CIA unless you have a previous military background in some kind of combat MOS, as they say, military occupational specialty. Navy SEAL, Ranger, Special Forces, Infantry, Paratrooper, so forth.
That's very helpful.
When did you get into when were you recruited by the CIA, Pedro?
I was recruited in the fall of 1999.
Okay.
Within 2 weeks, I got my notification that they were going to bring me on board, which is conditional because then you got to go through the vetting process, the background, the polygraph. And I came on board in July of 2000.
Okay, and you and I got a couple just quick fire questions here on that. And you were you were recently separated, right? In the last few years, was it 2019 or somewhere around there? I saw.
And my last official date on paper, based on when I received final notification that my appeal for reinstatement was denied, was mid-January, like January 20th of 2019.
Okay.
So he's going to talk about what happened.
Yeah. But this is in relation to the recruiting and given that you were in the last 20 years in an interesting time, you witnessed 9/11 and then you saw the Patriot Act and so forth. And now we live in an era where people don't trust the CIA. It's probably got the lowest approval rating of all time, maybe besides the Church Committee in the 70s. Did you see an evolution of how the CIA recruited during your tenure? And was there any apparent shift in strategy that was noticeable? I mean, in terms of domestic targeting of quote unquote terrorism or terrorists. Was there anything that you noticed changed markedly over that time span?
A couple things I can highlight. I mean, I certainly saw a devolution in the quality of the personnel. When I first came on board, I was working predominantly with a significant amount of CIA officers who had been there for decades, in 70s, 80s, 90s. I mean, I actually worked with some people that worked back in Vietnam, the Cold War in the 70s. For that matter, the Contra Wars in the 80s, and then even some of the conflicts in the 90s. Most of the people that were the older generation had lots of life experiences before they came on board the CIA. Police officers, teachers, businessmen, lawyers,
Wow.
the private sector experience, military experience. But then fast forward when I came in, I was at the tail end of basically there were quite a bit of cuts to the CIA in the 90s. But then fast forward to 9/11, September 11, 2001. That just changed everything. All of a sudden, the intelligence community, Department of Defense, started getting billions of dollars in extra funds. So there was a massive hiring spree to bring as many people as possible for the global war on terror. And I saw how they were bringing in young individuals with no life experiences, just basically some academic training. And the quality of their decision making, their performance as far as knowing how to work, being diligent workers, hard workers, intelligent workers, it was definitely not well developed. And that's a factor that plays a lot in it, a devolution of the actual work the CIA has done through the years. And I fully document that in my memoir, The Broken Whistle, Deep State Run Amok. And there are glimpses of it in there as far as seeing the vast differences that I encountered when I was in Iraq, 2004, 2006, working with a lot of these older generation officers. Contrast that with what happened to me in Afghanistan in 2014, 2015, when I'm working with some of the younger people that are just absolutely just not cut out for it.
Where were you in Iraq?
In Iraq, I was in actually Baghdad.
Okay.
I spent 2 years in Baghdad, 2004, 2006.
Okay. I was in Ramadi in 04, so with the Army.
Oh, I remember Ramadi, 2004. It's especially, yeah.
Wild West, right. Well, so as Terry mentioned, maybe you want to talk about your book and your story, and thanks for that introduction about how you got involved. Why don't you tell us? Why don't you give us just the story arc that brought you to the point of becoming a whistleblower?
Well, try to summarize it in a way that is kind of quick and easy to understand.
Okay.
By the time I got to Afghanistan in 2014, I had already had 8 exceptional performance awards. I had 2 years of conflict zone experience in Iraq at a high level, working with the senior station officers, the chief of station, deputy chief of station, chief of operations, and every single leader in the station. Working also with high-level military leaders. I'm talking about generals, colonels. In fact, that's where I met General Flynn. At the moment, he was Colonel Mike
really?
Flynn.
No kidding.
I did quite a bit of work with the Joint Special Operations Command, the multinational forces of Iraq, the detainee operations, a lot of interagency collaboration.
Quick
It was
sidebar.
stellar work.
Well, quick sidebar for you. Wasn't aware that you worked with General Flynn. What was your experience like working with him? Was
just an absolute professional, on top of his game. I mean, he was by far the best military intelligence officer that I've ever worked with.
Wow.
Or for that matter, military leader.
Wow.
High level integrity.
Wow. That's high praise. Okay. Sorry to derail you there. He worked with Terry. Did you hear that? He worked with General Flynn.
Oh, cool.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead. So you were
in. Continue the thread that I'm on. And before that, 4 solid years of analytical work in the Director of Intelligence, writing President's daily briefs, doing quite a bit of briefings, finished intelligence products. So these experiences culminated in getting the operational tradecraft training to get certified as an operations officer, which sent me back out to the field to another conflict zone where I did stellar work, phenomenal work. That led to another overseas tour, this one to Afghanistan, doing a tour as a counterintelligence referent. Again, wonderful accolades. I go back to CIA headquarters. Now I'm working on a technical program, doing technical targeting. high value targets, basically counterterrorism work. And, that takes me out again to the field on temporary duty.
So Pedro, sorry to interrupt because this is intriguing. So, like, say when you went to Afghanistan, right? I mean, are you blended in with the special forces? Like what's your living environment? Are you dressed like like the guys we see on TV? I'm just curious.
I was working at a CIA base, working with CIA personnel doing CIA work. But yes, there was a significant amount of collaboration with military forces, military intelligence collectors, the defense intelligence individuals, also foreign liaison, different intelligence services. But it was all basically doing inside the wire meetings. And I did go outside the wire, but I was not basically an operator like the covert action folks going out the wire doing operations.
No full beard,
which was
or anything.
seldom in Afghanistan, except for the paramilitary.
Yeah, no full beard and everything, like we.
No, but I mean, sidebar commentary here. I handled a Taliban asset. It's funny. You hear I'm sitting talking to this Taliban guy, full dress with Taliban gear, Taliban wardrobe, and then I'm looking at his shoes, and he's wearing Nikes. That's hilarious.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, and so all this experience culminated and led to getting an assignment as a deputy chief of base in Afghanistan, where I went out in December of 2014. Mind you, they don't give a deputy chief of base or a chief of base position unless they deem the persons are well qualified.
Right.
In my case, I had proven performance in war zones with the performance appraisals, the awards to validate that I was well qualified. And on top of that, when they sent us out to these war zones as managers, they give us some extensive additional managerial training seminars where we get explicit guidance on what we're to do, what not to do. So it sets me up. I go out.
You had to make high pressure decisions in those situations, right? I mean, that's why they don't just put anybody in that position, right? I mean, you have to have.
Well, technically, they're not supposed to, do they? That's what they did in Coast, where they sent out a chief of base in Coast in 2009 that made some poor decisions that cost her life and the life of 6 other CIA officers.
Yeah, I remember that story. Yeah.
Well, basically, I find myself in almost a similar situation in this base in Afghanistan in 2014, 2015. They sent out a chief of base who was a woman. I mean, I've worked with highly qualified women at the CIA. In fact, I remember one that was a chief of base in Iraq in 2004, 2006, and other highly qualified CIA women. But this particular lady was way out of her element, no war zone experience. She was only out there to get her 5 years overseas, which would grant her the special retirement plan that you can retire after 20 years of age and not 20 years of service and age 50. And, I mean, it's a tough job being in a war zone. There's the isolation, the separation from family, the daily grind of the hours, the noisy, dirty environment, the quality of the food.
The people shooting at you all the time.
And we had a serious problem with indirect rocket attacks in this particular base.
Yeah.
So she couldn't handle any of those things and started playing favorites, adopting some of her own words, creating a hostile work environment, and also sending us outside of our base during times of intensified threats with rockets landing around us to go out for food, yoga classes, social activities.
Jeez.
And we weren't meeting the military as we were required to do, to collect information, collaborate, share information. So the hostile work environment, the threats to our own safety, the situation was just a nightmare, and I had to speak truth to power. And without going into the weeds as far as exactly what happened in this process, I spoke up to the people I needed to speak up to.
Right.
But the people that I spoke up to didn't do anything about it. Ultimately, I had to politely and professionally confront her. But as, the psychologist that I spoke with said, she wouldn't understand, she wouldn't get it, she didn't. So one day the situation just blows up between an older and a younger officer. And she started falsely accusing the older officer of drawing a weapon that he did not do. And in this process, I had to speak up the truth again and defend the older officer. And unfortunately, what happened here was the person I spoke up to would have been the superior above her, which was also my superior. He didn't want to hear any of this, and he basically wanted to take reprisals against this older officer. And he
So
was
just to clarify real quick, you're suggesting that a chief of base accused another officer of pulling a weapon, and you're saying that that was not true.
That is correct.
And then
she falsely accused.
Not only that, there was a superior that you raised this issue to that wanted to let it play out as is and didn't want to hear your side of it.
What he wanted to do was he wanted basically to hang the older officer,
Right.
malign him, get him sent home, get him kicked out of our base for having done something he did not do, to cover up for the feckless mismanagement of this chief of base who had created this hostile work environment and had put our lives in danger. So it leads to basically this lady just taking reprisals against me, at which point in time I had to bring it up to the chief of station, at which point in time, he got all the details. And his last words to me was, go on your leave, because we were given leave. I took an early leave to basically just get out of this mess momentarily to see how they can fix this. I was going to come back. But basically, despite this chief of station telling me, we're going to take care of this, take your leave, we'll get back to you. As soon as I get home, within the week, I'm being called to CIA headquarters for a meeting. When I show up to the meeting, I'm basically being told that I'm not going back to Afghanistan, and they wouldn't tell me why. I was basically fired from my job, sent home, and this basically leads into I call it a chapter, back to CIA headquarters, the pit of hell, because it was just bureaucratic
That's how
bullying
a lot of us
and
think it
cheating
is.
at its finest.
Really?
Yeah.
The politics in the CIA at that level are bad.
Yeah.
Really?
Why do you call it the pit of hell? Tell us, please.
Well, what I ran into here was, they're telling me to use the grievance channels, use the Equal Employment Opportunity Office, use the Office of Inspector General,
right.
To resolve something that was so simple. Basically, all they needed to do here was give me a follow-on assignment to compensate me and fix a slanderous, defamatory performance appraisal that anybody who read it would know right off that this lady was either crazy or out of her mind. But instead of trying to help me to find a job and correct this, they were trying to beat me and bully me until I would literally quit and leave the CIA. And at the same time, they were using EEO, that's Equal Employment Opportunity Office, the Inspector General, the grievance officer, human resources. They were using every office to stymie, bully, silence, stop, everything. Like EEO wouldn't help at all. The IG didn't want to investigate. The grievance officer basically is like washed his hands of it and passed it to EEO. Human resources was worthless.
Sounds like you worked for the government, Pedro.
A government on steroids to cover up their violations of law by destroying my life,
right,
my career, my well-being,
Reputation.
when all they had to do was basically offer me a follow-on job. I made it really easy for them to resolve.
And it sounds like your resume was pretty impeccable within the agency.
To give you more details, this is just absolutely almost impossible to believe. There was a perfect job that they kept advertising month after month after month after month that I applied for. I had the language, I had the training, they needed somebody, I was ready to deploy, and they wouldn't answer me on the job and they would re-advertise it. I apply again, they wouldn't answer me on the job and they would re-advertise it.
They
And in this
blackballed you
process,
then. Yeah.
I reached out to people who could help me get the job. And ultimately, they didn't give me the job and they never filled the job. Meanwhile, they're crying to Congress, we don't have enough people. We don't have enough foreign language people. We need more people. We need more money. And here they are not giving me a job. And they actually chased me away where I have to do a what's called a joint duty assignment, where I had to pull myself out of the CIA and go work for the Director of National Intelligence at the Office of Inspector General for the Intelligence Community as a means to find a safe place to work.
So what led you to the whistleblowing? Was it just the constant, pressure that you were getting from them and the obfuscation and
Well, I followed their orders. They told me talk to EEO, talk to the IG, talk to HR, talk to the grievance office.
Okay.
I followed their directions.
Yeah.
So I became an accidental whistleblower. But then there's a lot more to this story that will develop further.
So, so one of the things I noticed that you talked. Let me back up for a second. Since you left CIA, and you know how it works and everything, and I know that you're doing this. You're involved in this Deep State Gangsters movie with a few other people. We actually interviewed Nate Kane on this channel as well, and so what else can you tell us about how the CIA operates that is outside their purview, that is unaccountable, that goes against Congress and any accountability? I mean, we saw in the 70s the Church Committee, and that was supposed to be some sort of accountability public trial for the CIA, right? But then if anybody can look on the internet and find out that they never stopped doing the things they were doing. William Colby, the former director, ended up dead in a river mysteriously. Like, nothing seems to have changed. Was there anything that are your eyes open to a different, perspective on what the CIA is doing and has done, given that you're now out of the agency and you can look at it through a different lens?
I can look at it through the lens of what I experienced firsthand, what I can solidly report with irrefutable evidence, and particularly in the whistleblower arena.
Okay.
Within the context of this story, eventually it's like I took asylum in the Office of Inspector General for the Intelligence Community. And without getting into the details as far as what happened there, because it's just absolutely fascinating. That's just one chapter alone. I end up being sent back to CIA for what I call round 2 with the Devils, and then round 3 with the Devils.
Does your pay grade stay the same?
And that's where I can elaborate on your question.
Does your pay grade, I'm just curious, like when they sent you over there and they sent you back, then in the government, does your pay grade stay the same, or do they mess with it?
Since it was a joint duty assignment, I was still a CIA officer.
Good. Okay.
My grade and pay stayed the same.
Good. Okay.
And on that note, here's something fascinating. You've got your GS general schedule grade, but a lot of times you're taking jobs that are above your pay grade.
They don't bump you up. Yeah.
But they don't pay you what the job pay grade is supposed to be. On that note, almost every single job I took at the CIA, except for the last one, was above my pay grade. One of them, the Iraq one was actually a GS-15, and I was a GS-9 going to GS-10. So I went out there as a GS-10 actually. So I was a GS-10, and I'm taking a GS-15 job. But
Isn't that the high? Is that the highest? GS-15, the highest rank?
then you go into senior executive. In the intelligence world, they call it senior intelligence service.
Let me
And that
guess,
can go up
if
to-
you go backwards, they probably lower your pay, though. But if you go upwards, they probably don't, right?
Well, on that note, if they want to take care of somebody, they will change things around. There's
Politically,
one lady that was a GS-15, and something happened in her personal life, and they wanted to help her. So they actually put a GS-15 officer in a GS-13 job. And you're not supposed to do that. How they did it, I don't know, but that's a true story.
It's the politics.
The point is
Right.
that when they want to go out of their way to help somebody to get a job, they will do it.
It's
In
like,
fact,
it's like the corporate
they
world.
will make jobs for people.
Right.
Yep. Same
Right.
thing. Yep.
Right. Yeah. Right. I've seen it.
So-
There's a lot of that in the corporate world. We
So-
both work in the corporate world. Yeah.
So keep
So,
going.
I mean-
This is your story, so you could keep flowing on. Lead us down this path that
So
this makes us-
I was at round 2 and round 3 with the Devils. So what I witnessed is how the bureaucracy just defies the law, breaks the law. We're talking civil rights law, equal employment opportunity. We're talking about whistleblower laws, Presidential Policy Directive 19, which it has the same weight and equivalent as a presidential executive order, which has the same weight and equivalent as United States statute code law. But the reality is that even though it's just a presidential directive, there was a congressional intelligence act that made it statutory code law. So we had laws on the book that would protect those who made protected disclosures, a whistleblower, on what they reasonably believe evidences, violations of law, abuses of authority, fraud, waste, significant specific endangerment of public safety, so forth. So what I witnessed is how the IGs would not, and I must say, would not investigate according to the letter of the law. And that's what we found out when I was working at the IG, because we did an evaluation on these whistleblower protections. Moreover, I had to use the Intelligence Community Whistleblower Protection Act to make disclosures to Congress. And the IG for the intelligence community refused to pass them, wouldn't get back to me. So they were breaking the law. Then when I managed to find a creative way through an attorney to notify Congress about these disclosures, the Office of Congressional Affairs, the CIA, threatened me that I could be fired if I had direct contact with Congress outside of their office. But more importantly, they were telling me we don't pass those kind of materials to Congress. So I have no idea to this day exactly what they passed to Congress. So what I do know is
to Congress.
Yeah, what materials they would pass to Congress from the disclosures that I made.
But aren't they accountable to Congress, and they're refusing to pass?
Okay. Well, that's the point. So what I witnessed was how they refused to be accountable to Congress through failing to pass accurately information that Congress either asked for it or by law they're compelled to pass to Congress. I saw how they would basically not tell the truth, lie, creatively.
This is an ongoing investigation. That's I've seen like that a million times from intelligence agency people, testifying before Congress.
I've got a name for the Office of Congressional Affairs, OCA, Office of Covert Affairs, Office of Covert Action, because those offices are there to manage the relationship with Congress, to make sure that Congress gives the intelligence community what they want, and to make sure that they will spin, lie, deceive Congress, so that Congress will not know the full truth in some matters. That's a fact, and that's not hyperbole. That's not me basically extrapolating. That's just the plain truth.
We see that with the FBI. We see everything that's going on. How these guys lie and they deceive. They don't answer. I mean, it's apparent to a normal person that watches this.
Right.
Yeah.
Would you say that happens with the Gang of Eight Even the Gang of Eight as well.
Uh, More than likely, it happens with the Gang of Eight. There is truth and validity that the intelligence community will pass and tell Congress, certain materials, and sometimes it's pretty damning. It's something that went wrong. But when it's something that they can conceal, they can spin. They find a way to spin it. Something made it in the book, and I can talk about it. I saw a program that was what I called a $1 billion boondoggle, where they worked on a program that was billions of dollars, and they bungled it. They messed it up. So the way they cover it up is they told Congress, we hired the wrong people. Because we hired the wrong people, this program got botched up. Well, the truth is, it's not that they hired the wrong people. It's that the bureaucrats over the people they hired bungled this program. So eventually, there was no accountability here.
Was that taxpayer money? Obviously.
Everything else.
It's obviously taxpayer money.
Just making that clear.
It was it a contractor too that was doing a program for the government, or was it just the labor associated with the CIA? When you said it got bumbled,
This program I can't talk about the details of this program, but it would have been just, we're talking billions of dollars. It's going to be staff officers, probably contractors, and who knows what else.
I used to work for a big governmental
cover the
contracting
full gamut.
Yeah, I worked for. Matter of fact, I sat in training with generals and stuff at Falls Church back before my last job, and so I know they would hire a lot of generals from the military that retire to get those contracts, right? And then that's the only reason I was curious about that question, because I know a lot of that goes on.
Well, a little sidebar here. One of the problems that we've had within the government structure as far as national security in this global war on terror is the exponential increase of funds that brought in just a vast amount of contract dollars with contract personnel, not just the intelligence community, but the Defense Department. I mean, most people don't realize that our current military and intelligence budget is more than $900 billion. $900 billion in a year. If you were to look at gross domestic product for all nations in the world, I believe the figure is about 20 nations who have a gross domestic product larger than the 900 plus billion. So that means every nation below that has a gross domestic product less than the combined spending the U.S. has for military and intelligence.
I think I've seen somewhere where we spend more than the next 26 countries combined on our defense budget, which is it's incredible. So
keep going.
Okay, so the whistleblower problem. I mean, this becomes a major issue in the last few years, right? As Trump goes after the deep state, he starts calling out their BS. We start seeing more whistleblowers. We actually saw some in the Obama administration, right? Can you talk about like what is it that you've seen that the government does to whistleblowers they don't like? I mean, obviously Snowden, people like this are the major examples, but can you tell us through your experience what you've seen that the government will do to whistleblowers that they don't like?
Well, from my firsthand experiences, going through this process, the IGs launched a retaliatory investigation against me. So now I'm having to waste time, money, and resources to combat an investigation against me. In this entire process, I needed a new attorney, and I followed the policies and the procedures to request clearing a new attorney. And the Office of General Counsel for the CIA refused to clear a new attorney, which created some serious problems. And in this mess, I ended up having to begin to blow the whistle on the broken whistle to seniors at CIA. I'm talking about Mike Pompeo, his number 3, Ryan Bulatao, also the Director of National Intelligence, Daniel Coates, and then his deputy, which would have been Susan Gordon. I'm blowing the whistle at these high levels, and they continue to basically provide roadblock after roadblock, nobody helping me to resolve anything, not giving me any jobs. I have to basically take a job that was below my capabilities, so they don't offer you jobs. They blackball you, they blacklist you. Nobody wants to do anything with you. Your career is just pretty much destroyed. Forget about promotions. Having to spend money on attorneys trying to work these cases out. And ultimately, what happens here is what happened in my case. Since I refused to be silenced, they started to send the Office of Security against me basically like a mafia, with mafia-like tactics, like sending a warning, you shut up or we're going to take the job away from you. Which basically at that point in time, I say, well, if you take this so serious like you're taking, why not the Director of Security and I sit down and talk about this? Since the Director of Security for the CIA sent an emissary to basically warn me.
Do they? And when you say that, do they come to your house or at the office? I'm just curious. Is it more impactful to?
In the CIA office, I got called to a special meeting with a high-level security officer directly mandated, requested by the Director of Security.
But clearly there was an intimidation factor, though.
Clearly it was a threat. I mean, I was basically told, are you enjoying your job? You like your job? Be happy you have a job. Basically trying to tell me we're going to take the job away from you if you don't shut up. So when I went back to that security officer telling him, well, send a message to the Director of Security that since he takes these matters so seriously, why doesn't the Director of Security meet with me personally to discuss it? Forget the middleman. Let's just sit face to face and talk. Well, the next thing I know is I've got basically the enforcer who is going to do a hit job. The personnel security director coming after me, threatening to take the job away from me, threatening to take my clearance if I refuse to sign a gag order. It was basically a gag order, demanding that I shut up. So I couldn't sign the gag order because, first of all, he threatened me to take personnel actions against me. So that was a violation of the law. That's a violation of whistleblower protections. You cannot threaten a whistleblower, telling them you will take their job away from you when they're blowing the whistle. And that's what he did. This was a pure violation of the law. So I was protected by law. So at that point in time, I went straight to Daniel Coates, Susan Gordon, Mike Pompeo, Brian Bulatow, and they did absolutely nothing for me. They allowed this security official to run an operation where he basically put surveillance on me to see what kind of car I drove, which is stupid.
Really?
Because I have to register my car, part of our basically financial reporting obligation. So they knew what kind of car I drove to waste the government resources. And eventually what will happen is when I was driving into one building to attend a meeting, they basically had armed guards. And when I show up to the gate, the lady looks at me, looks at a paper and says, "Can I have your badge, please?" And I'm assessing the situation. It was quite obvious the guy had put out a be on the lookout for. So I gave her my badge and left. And that started a process from the outside that is, I call it fighting with the kangaroos at the CIA, because it was a kangaroo court procedure.
Yeah. So going for what's the next steps that, as you went through this process that I think I talked, it was kind of disturbing because I thought Pompeo was a pretty cool guy. And then you had 19 years in, right? And then 20 years is the threshold, right, for retirement, which kind of just sucks, man.
Yeah. A synopsis of this entire process. Basically, the Office of Security put me through what's known as the Personnel Evaluation Board, which is a termination board. The ironic thing here is that the board that consists of certain CIA officers only makes a recommendation to the Deputy Director of Security, who makes the final decision. So, the office that took reprisals against me was going to make a decision on what to do about my case, irregardless of what the board recommended. I have no idea what the board recommended. For all I know, the board could have recommended not firing me. And even if they did, I had an appeal right, which whatever decision was made, whoever made that decision, I appealed it. but my appeal goes to the director of security, the guy that ordered me to get fired.
And do you have an attorney
So,
helping you with this stuff? or
so
is
I
this
mean,
by
the
yourself?
first two reviews are just a joke.
Do you
So
have
that's
a-
why I call it
do you have a-
wrestling with the CIA kangaroos.
Do you have an attorney that helps you with this, or is this all like by yourself with discussions?
Well, they refused to allow me to retain a new attorney, and I had a low-level EEO attorney who was not really experienced in dealing with the CIA. That they were a great attorney. I got nothing bad to say about them, but I was trying to retain one of the national security law experts that's well known in this DC capital region. And they knew that if this person got a hold of this case, it would be really bad news for them. So they were denying me the ability to get this attorney. And that's what led to this escalation, because in this entire process, I notified Sue Gordon, Daniel Coates, that, I'm being denied an attorney here.
So, how did they get away with it? And you tell them to go stick it up their ass. I'm getting another attorney. Like, how does that work? That they could-
Well, here's the problem. I was undercover, so I couldn't talk to the attorney unless I would reveal my cover.
Okay.
Okay, so that's the problem I had. But
So
these
these are the
attorneys
kinds
were,
of loopholes that they use to silence a whistleblower.
but these attorneys were idiots, because they told me, go ahead and tell the attorney about your case, but don't tell him your name.
Yeah, well, that doesn't. Yeah,
And then the security officer's telling me, you can't tell the attorney nothing about your case. And basically, had I approached the attorney directly and revealed to him who I am, the details of my case, they could have given me a security violation, and that could have resulted in revoking my clearance.
couldn't you use the media as a tool to support and help you at that point in time when you're labeled a whistleblower?
He had to get basically a limited security clearance, limited security, an LSA, whatever it's called. So it's basically the Office of Security, the Office of General Counsel have to basically approve that this attorney is going to be allowed to get access to classified information. And the reality is that there was nothing classified in this case other than the fact that I was under CIA cover.
But couldn't you use the media too to bolster, to like a hammer or a threat of exposure? What's going on? Weren't you allowed to leak it to the media just like the government does that, or
No, if I were to approach the media, leak to the media, then they can basically, revoke my clearance
Right.
or take administrative actions against me. But keep in mind, when I was going through this was 2017, 2018, we were at, the crux of the Russia hoax, where the media completely flipped. And the media was, the FBI, CIA are great. They can do no wrong.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because I read that you had talked about this, and given your experience as a whistleblower, the Ukraine whistleblower, I wanted to ask you about that, because I think you might have some insight into this. But it seems to me like what you were just saying was the whistleblowers they don't like, they'll use the very nature of what the CIA is, or the national, the security state is, which is clandestine secrecy, to, stifle the message of anybody trying to report things that are going wrong. What can you explain from your perspective as a whistleblower what it is you saw that was inconsistent with the Ukraine whistleblower story, and what seemed to be off about that, and was it politically motivated from your perspective?
But from my perspective, I used the Intelligence Community Whistleblower Protection Act in April, May of 2017. They refused to answer. I followed up May, they refused to answer. I follow up in July, they refused to answer. That's when, through the Office of Congressional Affairs, I don't know exactly what was passed, but some things were passed. So I managed to open a line of communication with the Senate Select Committee of Intelligence in that summer, fall of 2017, and some materials were passed. Then, fast forward to summer 2018. Again, now by this time we finally have an inspector general at the office of the inspector general for the intelligence community. That's a whole nother story. There were some serious problems in that office,
Right.
and they had interim leaders, but they finally had a new inspector general. So I reached out to the new inspector general, and they tell me to refile my, I'll say ICWPAs. That stands for the Intelligence Community Whistleblower Protection Act, disclosures. So when I eventually refile my disclosures, I'm filing disclosures that in part were already filed, but they never answered. They basically suppressed them. So when I refiled them in early 2019, they immediately get back to me and they tell me, you cannot pass them. You're not employed. You have no right to pass these disclosures. Now, mind you, all my disclosures were firsthand as an intelligence community employee, having witnessed these things firsthand. And they were about some serious intelligence programs and issues within the CIA and whistleblower protections. And there were some other whistleblowers who had also blown the whistle on these whistleblower procedure deficiencies. So fast forward to the Ukraine whistleblower, predominantly September 2019. All of a sudden, you have the same procedure I used, the ICWPA. And you're hearing all this uproar about a suppressed disclosure that the DNI is not passing to Congress. And, we find out that it was hearsay, that it wasn't direct knowledge, and that it wasn't an intelligence community employee really at the heart of it. It turns out that it was a National Security Council individual who witnessed the information and was making accusations on privileged communications between a president and a foreign leader that falls outside of the scope of the Director of National Intelligence, intelligence programs, intelligence funding, and for that matter, is outside the scope of authorities of the Inspector General for the intelligence community. So all this uproar, and you have congressional action, you have Congress jumping on it, you have the press backing them up, clearly political motivations to damage Trump and unseat him. Keep in mind that I did make disclosures to Congress. I don't know exactly what they got when I was on the inside, but when I was on the outside going through the termination process in 2018, I passed them, kind of sanitized, kind of unclassified tidbits to give them clues as far as what to look for. And despite my efforts to get the Senate Select Committee of Intelligence or the House Permanent Select Committee of Intelligence to help me and do something, not a single senator or congressman came to my aid at all.
That's messed up. So before I'd like to close out your story, right? And then we're gonna do like a little thing for 30 seconds on My Pillow, Mike Lindell. Everyone does the Mike Lindell commercial, and then close out your story, right? That we're here discussing, and then after we do the Mike Lindell commercial, we like to hear about your documentary. Let everyone know about your documentary, and when it's coming out and where they can see it. Does that sound good?
That's fair. Yeah.
So go ahead. Close out your story and whatever you think you need to wrap that up.
So basically, in this entire process, I was terminated, and I was a year shy of retirement. They could have put me on administrative leave for a year, and then I could have retired and gotten my pension. So they wanted basically to destroy me. And without getting into all the details, obviously it caused just significant damage to, more importantly, my family, my daughter, who now lives in a foreign country.
And they did this to somebody who served their country honorably for 19 years, including in 2 different war zones.
And I paid a heck of a price physically, working in these war zones. I've got some physical ailments.
Thank you for your service, by the way. Thank you for your service.
So, it's all the sacrifices you make, all the years being away from family. It's the sacrifices government employees who work overseas, military individuals who work overseas make for our country is significant.
Absolutely.
To have a bunch of bureaucrats back at CIA headquarters just destroy somebody's career because they just want to cover up and conceal a liability. That's basically what it boils down to. But to me, the hardest part to have dealt with has been the just inaction by Congress. The reason why these agencies take reprisals against whistleblowers is because they know they can get away with it because Congress does nothing about it.
So like the likes of Jim Jordan or Matt Gaetz, you know, he helped me big time, right? Troy Neals helped me big time. I mean, did you not approach those type of individuals that stand out, that have a little bit more balls than the rest of them? Or like, did you reach out to people for help or?
Because it's an intelligence community issue, it falls in the hands of the Senate Select Committee of Intelligence and the House Permanent Select Committee of Intelligence. And sadly, those two committees are there to do the bidding for the intelligence community. They're not there to do oversight. There is a serious deficiency in these committees in doing actual oversight. There is...
Pedro, quick question on that. Do you think that there's a possibility that is because the intelligence community holds some sort of pressure over congressional? I mean, John Brennan covered up the fact that the CIA was monitoring Congress, like they were spying on them essentially. So do you think that, you know, there's a possibility that there's, you know, some blackmail there? That's why these issues aren't resolved?
There's several angles. One serious issue is a lack of personnel working in these committees to do oversight. The personnel that really know their material are the staffers, and these staffers cannot get clearances unless these agencies provide the clearances for these staffers to work. So these agencies pretty much control who works in these committees. Most of these congressmen and senators are almost clueless about a lot of these issues. Some of them don't even understand the whistleblower laws. And there may be elements of blackmail, or more importantly, I would say it's not the actual element of blackmail, but it's the fear that these agencies can come after you.
Right.
That they can put the full force and weight of the power of the government against you, like they did with General Flynn. And many of these congressmen, if they were to do some deep dive investigations, a lot of them may have some questionable campaign finance issues. Some of them may have some personal finance conflicts.
Right.
So it's best for them not to rock the boat, because if they rock the boat, they can find something on them.
But what you said, that totally doesn't jive. You're saying that the people that are supposed to be policing the intelligence community cannot hire somebody the intelligence community says they can't hire.
That happens. That happened to President Trump. When President Trump was trying to put personnel in the National Security Council, the intelligence community refused to give clearances to some of the personnel he selected. And that forced some of those potential individuals not to be part of the Trump administration. Well, the same thing happens with congressional staffers.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That's crazy. I don't know how we can have proper oversight if the people that are supposed to be policed are, you know, doing the hiring for the people that are policing them. That doesn't make any sense. All right.
So why don't you close out your story? Oh, you did? You're good? Okay.
I'm good.
Let's do this little quick My Pillow thing. Hey, you guys got to buy pillows from us. That's the only. I don't think we sold a pillow yet.
BELL 17. I was pushing this hard. Once again, I gotta say,
take that down so we could read that up there. There's no question.
I've had two My Pillows for like 5 years. They're solid. They've kept their form the whole time. I bought them before I even knew who this guy was. I'm telling you, it's a solid product.
Yeah. Yes, Bell 1776. Do you hear that? Bell 1776. Go to mypillow.com. Buy some slippers. He's even got robes and everything.
Plus, this guy's doing a lot of good patriotic work for our country and on elections and election integrity, and he's trying to clean up our electoral system. So
we need to sell a few pillows to pay for the drinks we have every night, once a week. You know,
BELL 1776. Buy them. Buy some pillows. Buy some slippers.
Yeah.
Buy some terry cloth robes.
Yep. So, all right, Pedro's back. So. Pedro's going to talk about his document.
Yeah, yeah.
I got my pillow. There it goes.
Very good.
Awesome. BEL 1776.
Tell us, quickly about about your documentary.
Yes,
who's
please.
in it, and where people can see it.
So Frank X. Panico and I have worked together on putting together a documentary on 4 whistleblower stories with 2 color commentators. So it's going to be John Kiriakou, the CIA torture whistleblower.
Yep.
Nate Kane, the Uranium One whistleblower.
Yeah, he was on our show.
That was a crazy story.
Garrett O'Boyle, one of the Suspendables FBI whistleblowers, and myself. And we tell our stories as whistleblowers as far as how the government came after us to ruin our lives. And then to add some perspective, we have Lee Smith, the author of The Permanent Coup Against the President.
Yeah.
And J. Michael Waller, the author of Big Intel, to provide expert color commentary on basically the deep state, the abuse of government power. So the main message is, weaponization of government power, and what does it mean?
Yep.
And if we don't rise up and act to stop these abuses of government power, we're going down the path of tyranny.
Right.
And we highlight one significant example in the democide of the 20th century. Most people are not familiar with the term democide, which is basically government murdering their citizens. In the 20th century, more than, estimates vary, but you can round it off to 160 to 180 million people murdered by their governments in the 20th century.
Yep.
These are not war related. We highlight the Holocaust. And there's a famous poem of who will speak for you when they come looking for you. The deep state gangsters working on a distribution plan. We know we can put it in conservative streamers like Salem, Newsmax, Epoch Times, OANN, but looking to potentially get it on Amazon, Netflix perhaps. Amazon may be a more than likely venue. And the release date, tentatively working on potentially Constitution Day, 17 September.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I would love to get O'Boyle on the show sometime. If you could help with that'd be great. Because he had something to do with January 6th, too, right? Or no?
Garrett O'Boyle.
No?
I'm not. I remember watching Garrett O'Boyle's testimony before Congress, and it was similar.
Was it January 6th? I forgot.
It was a similar story to you, Pedro, right?
He made disclosures to Congress about abuses of power by the FBI and targeting individuals over basically misdemeanors. And padding the numbers. It's like they were open double investigations. He gets into it in the documentary.
And then they docked his pay and wouldn't let him get a new job.
Yeah,
right?
and his family had a hard time. It's like with my case, we talked a little bit about it.
You should bring that up.
2 years after, so I peacefully attended January 6th with a friend that was a cop. We didn't touch anyone. We didn't even yell. I was kind of like, oh my God, I had a flagpole and a camera. We left before people went in. The last barrier with police officers, we left when it started getting crazy. We got back to the hotel, and I was sitting on the sofa. I'm like, oh my God, Rob, there's people in the Capitol. So we didn't even know any about that until we got back to the hotel. 2 years after January 6th, all these Chicago, because we have our show, we go out and fight the leftists. All of a sudden, these Chicago Antifa guys are tagging, how they do the sedition hunters and they find people's faces? They started tagging the FBI, your headquarters, and the Chicago field office saying, Terry Newsom tried to overthrow the government. Next thing you know, I'm on a domestic terrorist watch list. This is 2 years later. And then when Matt Gaetz, we met when we were standing up for our kids at the school board. Like I brought blow up posters of the oral sex images. We were confronting the school board about having this stuff, being given to our children. They had 2 law enforcement agencies, riot gear, and 2 FBI agents were at our school board meeting. One of the school board women, her husband works in the Chicago field office. But 2 years later, because Antifa started tagging the FBI, I suddenly become on a terrorist watch list. And then Matt Gaetz heard about it and read about it, and he sent his letter. And they acknowledge, Garland, Ray, and Mayorkas, they acknowledged they received a letter from Matt Gaetz on his congressional letterhead.
Yeah.
But they never answered them. They never answered. They still, to this date. And, talk about them lying to Congress and stuff. Those agencies, they never answered them. So you would think if one of those 3 clowns We still don't know who put me on this list, nor do we know who took me off. It shouldn't be that easy to go on a list, nor should it be that easy to go off a list, right?
Should not be that easy.
Why didn't you answer? If I was one of those lead agents, right, agencies, I would say, well, he did X, Y, and Z. They never answered them. It was all politics.
I mean, thankfully, in this particular case, Matt Gaetz sits, I believe, on the Homeland Security or Homeland Council, the oversight committee for the House of Representatives. So he does have oversight over these government bodies. So he's able to speak up on your behalf and others' behalf.
Yeah.
But Pedro, what do you think that? So a situation like Terry's, we don't have to go into the whole thing. He gave you a good overview. It's pretty egregious to me that he would end up on a list like that. Given, I mean, I know him and I know he's not a terrorist, or he should be. What allows agency to do something like that, which seems to be complete abuse of power? Was that a direct downstream effect of something like the Patriot Act?
There is a downstream effect from the Patriot Act. The Patriot Act, Global War on Terror, just opened up the spigot like a faucet of giving the government vast powers. If they can label you as a terrorist for any specific activities, they can justify putting you on a terrorist watch list. And there's the one issue here is there's so much subjectivity in this entire process that it's very easy to label somebody as a terrorist. Although I will say this, that, you know, a lot of times in this process, there's different layers of reviews. And unfortunately, you know, part of this process tends to be governed by the political will of the political appointees pushing downward.
Well,
and if they're
They made my wife, at the time my kids were 15 years old, two of their friends, and we went to see a Charlie Kirk event. They were all quad-est, my whole family, and put the kids. My wife was embarrassed, and it's just pissed me off big time. I don't care about me, but my wife and kids and having to go through that.
You just talked about democide. How dangerous of a path are we on when these types of weaponization of government examples are seemingly politicized? Because the politicization of it to me seems like the way, the clear path to tyranny, and down the path towards something like democide.
I mean, but look at the Democratic Party and how they've done their presidential politics nomination. The last legitimate, free Democratic presidential primary, potentially, you can say, was 2008. Because in 2016, based on the DNC email leaks, they rigged it for Hillary. In 2020, they pretty much rigged it for Biden. That's no secret.
No secret.
And look what they've done now in 2024.
They didn't even hide that.
They didn't even hide that one. Yeah, no. It's crazy. That's
tyranny. I mean, these are communist-like tactics. These are totalitarian tactics. This is what they do in totalitarian states. They pick the rulers. They don't allow the voters to pick the rulers.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I mean, it's interesting to hear you say that. I appreciate your perspective on that, because so many of the time when people bring something like that up, they're blamed as being partisan. Like, oh, you're just saying that because we call the right fascist. But no, it's the actions that they've taken are clearly more fascist than anything I've seen from the right.
Yeah. So hey, this is awesome. Thank you for your time. Wish you the best for your documentary. I hope it does well. And talk about your book. Where can people get your book if they want to get your book now?
The best place to get it is actually Amazon Prime. If you Google my name, Pedro Isreal Orta, you should get the Broken Whistle should populate up. Right now, the paperback is at $17.99, and you should be able to get it within a day, 2 or 3. The Amazon hardback doesn't have a dust jacket, but it's available at $27.99, and you may be able to get it within a few days. Now, if you're looking for a more traditional hardback with a dust jacket, that is through a distributor called Ingram Sparks, but I have a direct link on my website. My website If you go to Pedro
we have your
Orta.com,
website's been on there the whole time. So
Pedro
see it?
Isreal
if you
Orta.
go there, there's one tab that says book. You'll be able to see where it says hardback and click on the hardback.
Well, thank you, sir.
Thank you so
for your
much.
time. Wish you best on the documentary. We'll push that out for you.
Hey, Pedro, you want to hang on for a second while we close out, and we'll.
Sure.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? If your pillow's worn out, we could get you a discount too.
All right, yeah, just hang on for 1 second, Pedro. We wanted to chat with you for 1 second.
you.
Sure.
Thanks. That's it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Hopefully you enjoyed it.
We'll see you next week.
Are we off?